Do great compensation and awesome benefits rev your engines? If they do, then a career at Santander Consumer USA might be perfect for you. We're hiring collections and customer service reps, as well as those who can hablas español y inglés, at our beautiful offices in Denver, Colorado and Mesa, Arizona. Interested? Then don't wait to start moving your career in the right direction. Visit our website and apply today at SantanderCareers.com. That's SantanderCareers.com. Santander Consumer USA is an equal opportunity employer.
And now, a thought from Geico Motorcycle.
It took 15 minutes to take a spirit animal quiz online.
Please be the cheetah. Please be the cheetah.
And learn your animal isn't the cheetah, but the far less appealing blobfish.
Oh, come on.
To add insult to injury, you could have used those 15 blobfish minutes to switch your motorcycle insurance to Geico.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on motorcycle insurance.
Football represents something we are.
Football is like life. You gotta push.
Fantasy football is about proving that you are better than your friends.
Hold up.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Faceoff.
I'm gonna do what's best for the team.
Where fantasy meets reality.
Pure fantasy football nirvana.
And now your hosts,
let the games begin.
Anthony Cervino and Michael Hoff.
And welcome back to the FF Faceoff, where fantasy meets reality. It is always great to have you with us for another loaded Waiver Wire Monday edition of the most dynamic fantasy football podcast on the planet, seen at The Grueling Truth and at GridironExperts.com. And as always, we have a lot to do right now.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Coming to you live from the FF Faceoff studio at the rainy Jersey Shore, I am your host, Anthony Cervino. Follow me on Twitter, at The Real NFL Guru. And while you're at it, don't forget to follow the show at the FF Faceoff as well. You can find us on all of the top social media platforms. But before we get into the action, here is a public service announcement from Lord Alfred Hayes.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
All right, guys, you know how it works. If you like today's episode and subscribe to the channel, please leave us a comment saying that you have subscribed. And once you're done, we will reply back to as many as we can to show our appreciation to our outstanding listeners. And as always, this podcast is sponsored by FantasyData.com, home to the industry's top fantasy football data providers. FantasyData.com offers the hardcore fans the ability to download statistics, projections, and get their hands on some of the best premium fantasy football content in the industry at a very reasonable price. This year, FantasyData.com has created 2 new premium features that are getting a ton of buzz in the industry: the Advanced Efficiency Metrics and the Advanced Player Performance Metrics. These sortable pages dive deep into the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end positions, offering up some awesome golden nuggets for finding sleepers. Check out FantasyData.com right now and sign up using our promo code FACEOFF. That's FACEOFF. And now that that's all out of the way, here are my Week 12 waiver wire targets. All right, so we have some news, some significant fantasy football news. Marlon Mack, the top running back for your Indianapolis Colts, sustained, I believe, a fractured hand in yesterday's win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. And with Marlon Mack out, there is going to be a spot clearly opening up on top of the Indianapolis Colts depth chart. Normally, when Mack goes down, we've seen Jordan Wilkins handle the workload. But Wilkins was out. And it wasn't not only Nyheim Hines, because Nyheim Hines, let's face it, he's your hybrid. He's your primary receiving back. He'll get some carries in between the tackles, but not a lot. It was actually Jonathan Williams who received 13 carries for 116 yards and also caught one pass for 31 yards in the win over the Jaguars yesterday. And let's face it, I understand that normally Jordan Wilkins would be the guy, but when you have Jonathan Williams come in, and Jonathan Williams this season only had 2 touches for 1 yard, when he comes in and goes for, 147 yards on 14 touches, I mean, he's going to be the guy. When Marlon Mack is out, sure, maybe we see Wilkins too. But you have to assume with the game he had yesterday, 8.9 yards per carry, Jonathan Williams is going to be the guy. And while you can pick up both on waivers, I'm going to put Jonathan Williams over Jordan Wilkins right now. Pick them both up. Maybe they both split the work on early downs. But the guy I want in PPR leagues especially is going to be Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines, like I said, he's your hybrid. He's your primary receiver out of the backfield. In yesterday's game, sans Marlon Mack, 3 carries, 11 yards, and a touchdown, and 3 or 4 targets for 24 yards. I do expect his usage to pick up with Marlon Mack out. And let me just dig into Mack a little bit more and see what the latest report is on Marlon Mack. Colts head coach Frank Reich told the press that Mack underwent a procedure on Monday morning to repair the fracture in his hand. ESPN's Adam Schefter reports that, and I quote, although it's not thought to be season-ending, he is going to miss some time. How much time, we don't know. He is certainly going to miss Thursday night's game at the Texans. So at least if you need a plug-and-play back, if you're a Marlon Mack owner, and you can go get a Jonathan Williams or a Jordan Wilkins, who, by the way, was listed as a did not practice on the practice report on Monday. Let's assume that Wilkins doesn't play. Jonathan Williams is going to be your RB1 in a pretty favorable matchup against the Texans. I know they shut down Marlon Mack a couple of weeks ago in London, but they were absolutely demolished in all 3 phases of the game in yesterday's blowout loss to the Ravens. And no, the Colts aren't the Ravens, but they have one of the best offensive lines in the league. And I do believe they will push around the Houston Texans in their house and open up some tremendous holes for whoever the hell is running behind them, whether it's Jonathan Williams or Jordan Wilkins comes back and takes some of those touches. So I would put Jonathan Williams on top, Nyheim Hines second, and Jordan Wilkins third. Now, if Wilkins is healthy and reports come out stating that he's going to be the guy, then he's obviously going to jump up on top of your waiver wire priority. But if things are as they are right now, Jonathan Williams should be your top waiver wire target, especially at the running back position. Let's go to this surprising one. And Bo Scarborough. Bo Scarborough was drafted a couple of years ago by my Dallas Cowboys. And Bo Scarborough, I don't even know if he, maybe he lingered on the practice squad for a while, the former Alabama running back. He didn't last in Dallas long. He probably jumped around from practice squad to practice squad, and then boom, this week, he ends up being the top running back for the Detroit Lions. And he actually looked pretty good early, and even scored a touchdown in a revenge game against my Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys ultimately won the game. But to me, even though Ty Johnson was healthy, he only saw 2 carries and 1 reception, 3 touches. And J.D. McKissick is going to be involved because he is that hybrid Nyheim Hines type of back and is familiar with Darrell Bevell's system. But Bo Scarborough, 14 carries, the aforementioned touchdown of 55 yards. I do believe he is going to be the running back to own, at least on early downs for the Detroit Lions. Their next 3 games at Washington, certainly exploitable. Chicago, they cannot defend the run. I mean, look what Todd Gurley, who couldn't get going all season. He had his best game of the year last night against Chicago. And then Minnesota, who can be, they're okay against the run. They can be exploited if they're not game planning like they did against Zeke last week to stop it. So 2 out of the 3 are very plus matchups for Bo Scarborough. I would definitely try adding him. And he probably is available in, I would say, 99.9% of fantasy football leagues out there. And last but not least, right? How about Gus Edwards? And Gus Edwards, he is in the mix in a high-powered rushing Baltimore offense. Normally, it is going to be Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram. But Gus Edwards has been scoring of late, and yesterday he went absolutely ballistic in the blowout win over the Houston Texans. I don't know if his production and usage came as a result of more or less garbage time. But in 2 out of the past 3 games, both of them actually blowout wins. One over New England and the other over Houston yesterday. 7 for 27 and a touchdown against New England. 8 for $112 and a touchdown yesterday against Houston. Now, in between, at Cincinnati, only 4 carries for 17 yards. So he's not going to score every week. He's not going to have these type of games every week. But I do believe Gus Edwards could begin to get a little bit more involved in the offense, especially, look, Mark Ingram's 29, 30 years old. He's been playing outstanding, and I was one of those guys in the offseason and coming into the season that thought, listen, Justice Hill is going to be the running back to own by midseason because Mark Ingram's going to break down. That is not the case. He's going strong. But for a Ravens team that are legitimately the best team in the NFL, they're legitimately going to make a run at the Super Bowl, you have to assume that they want to take some of the touches and some of the carries away from Mark Ingram, especially in games that get out of hand, to preserve him for December and January, which means Gus Edwards is going to get more touches. So out of those 3 or 4 backs I just mentioned, Gus Edwards is last on the totem pole, more of a speculative handcuff ad who will give you a touchdown here and there. But he could certainly have more value as the season grows older. Let's go to the wide receiver position, and there's not a lot out there. You're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. Randall Cobb from my Cowboys really started coming on of late. Back-to-back 100-yard games with a touchdown. Is it going to happen every week? Absolutely not. He has a tough matchup upcoming with the New England Patriots, followed by the Buffalo Bills, 2 of the best secondaries in the league. But with Amari Cooper, listen, Cooper's been playing through injuries all season. He was not in the game. It seemed like he spent half of yesterday's win over the Lions on the sideline. And not because, every guy's hurt right now, and I would bet good money that Amari Cooper is certainly banged up. But in games where the Cowboys have the control, why not put him on the sideline and rest him, get him healthy, and preserve him? Which means Randall Cobb is going to see more targets, more routes run, more usage. So if you're in a bind, definitely pick up Randall Cobb. I don't love the matchup against New England, but I do think if in a PPR league especially, Cobb's floor isn't terrible. Devontae Parker is probably owned in a lot of leagues right now. I don't know why. But for a player that has had at least 11 PPR points in 7 straight games, he absolutely positively should be on most fantasy rosters in leagues with 12 teams and deeper. Devontae Parker, in yesterday's blowout loss to the Bills, became the first receiver this season to go over 100 yards against this stingy Buffalo secondary, 7 receptions, $135. While he's been a disappointment most of his career, it looks like Ryan Fitzpatrick is getting the best out of Devontae Parker. So was Devontae Parker the product of Adam Gase and Ryan Tannehill and whatever other quarterback was throwing to him because Tannehill can never stay healthy? Maybe. But when you have a slinger like Ryan Fitzpatrick getting you the ball and you've been productive, I don't know if I would close the book on Devontae Parker's career just yet. So he certainly should be added if he hasn't been yet. 2 more receivers before we move on. One of them is Hunter Renfrow, and Renfrow has been erratic. He isn't going to give you monster weeks, but he has a pretty high PPR floor as the number 2 receiver in Oakland. Over his past 4 games, he's averaging roughly 12 to 14 points a game in PPR leagues. And he's coming off of a week 11 in which he had 5 receptions for 66 yards. The Raiders are a contender. I don't know if they're a Super Bowl contender. Don't quote me on that. But with a win, they won yesterday, and with a Chiefs loss, they will be in first place in the AFC West. The Chiefs win, their game in week 12 is going to be for first place in the AFC West. I like players on teams like the Raiders. Their defense is getting better, but they can still be playing from behind. And I'll take a team playing from behind, and I'll take a player from that team like a Hunter Renfrow, because he's going to get targets, receptions, and yards, which gives him a decently high PPR floor, like a Cole Beasley, like a Jamison Crowder, and even like, at least recently, Randall Cobb. Hunter Renfrow is a guy I want on my fantasy team, and I do have him in a couple of spots. For the rest of the way, Oakland doesn't have much. Like, Tyrell Williams is he's really that, big play receiver. He had about 4 receptions, 82 yards. He's not going to be that high target reception yards guy. Hunter Renfrow really is emerging as a possession receiver. You can call Darren Waller the true possession wide receiver 1 on the Raiders, even though he's a tight end. But don't sleep on Hunter Renfrow. He's a rookie, he's just coming to his own, and he's only going to get better. Derek Carr, one of the more efficient and accurate quarterbacks in the league. Hunter Renfrow must be owned for the rest of the way. The last receiver I want to talk about is Deebo Samuel, and let's face it, Manny Sanders is banged up. Yes, he was active yesterday, but he's playing through a ribs injury, and a ribs injury is a pain tolerance issue. Maybe Manny Sanders was more of that decoy role yesterday, but in a great matchup, Deebo Samuel played extremely well. 8 for $134. Really lit it up in PPR scoring formats, and Deebo Samuel has now 2 straight weeks with at least 8 catches and 110 yards receiving. While Manny Sanders is out there, he's going to certainly draw the top coverage, which means rookie Deebo Samuel, who is a second-round pedigree, is going to run free. Deebo flashed before Manny Sanders got to San Francisco, but when Deebo was drawing the top coverage, he's just not there yet to exploit it. As the number 2, Deebo Samuel is going absolutely ballistic, and he's another guy I would want on my fantasy team for the rest of the way, especially on a team like the 49ers, who are a contender. Let's move on to the tight end position, and there's not much here, but the glaring player you definitely want to add. Let's pump the brakes. Let's go to Ross Dwelly for a second. Ross Dwelly, I was all over him, telling people to start him. I love the matchup. You can start like Jay Novacek if he came out of retirement for the Cowboys and played the Cardinals at 55 years old. Jay Novacek's going to score in the Cardinals. Cardinals secondary at tight end. They're just giving it up to everybody. I mean, when O.J. Howard has his first top 10 week and scores his first touchdown of the year, then follows that up, drops his only target, goes for a Saints turnover, and then gets benched. That shows you how bad O.J. Howard is, and he got over against the Saints. Ross Dwelly scores twice, even had one called back, has a monster game yesterday against the Cardinals. If George Kittle misses more time, Ross Dwelly must be added and started because Kyle Shanahan game plans his offense to feature the tight end, and Dwelly has been playing well, is getting the targets, and is producing with George Kittle out. But he's really not the guy because he's dependent on Kittle. The guy who's been really killing it is Ryan Griffin. I talk about Ryan Griffin a lot on this show. It comes to the question, what if Chris Herndon was healthy? What could he have done with Sam Darnold? But he's not. Ryan Griffin, on the other hand, seemingly every other week, this guy's popping off a big game, whether he's scoring a couple touchdowns, whether he's giving you a high PPR floor. Week 11, Ryan Griffin, 5 receptions, 109 yards and a touchdown. I mean, talk about a player that is not only getting targeted, he's playing on a Jets team that has a really good, I like Sam Darnold. He makes some ugly bad plays, throws some ugly picks, but in the past couple of games, Darnold is flashing as the first-round pedigree that he was chosen by the Jets last season. There's not a lot of quality pass-catching targets. Sure, Jamison Crowder. But you can make the case that, aside from Jamison Crowder, Darnold's second most trustworthy pass catcher, not named Le'Veon Bell, is the tight end Ryan Griffin. On top of all that, he's a red zone target, and he has a pretty favorable schedule. The Jets' schedule has opened up and will continue to open up. He gets Oakland this coming week, and Oakland gives up a ton of production to tight ends. Then he gets Cincinnati, another team that, 2 weeks ago, Mark Andrews scores twice. Yesterday, Foster Moreau scores, Darren Waller goes for 6 for 78. And then Miami. I love the schedule for Ryan Griffin. If you need a tight end for at least the next couple of games to the rest of the way, absolutely roster Ryan Griffin. And one more tight end of note, Jacob Hollister was on a bye last week, but going into his bye, he has put up 12 receptions for 99 yards and 3 touchdowns receiving in the last 2 games played in weeks 10 and 11. In weeks 9 and 10. Seattle had their bye in week 11, and coming off of it, they get the Philadelphia Eagles, and Ben Watson for the Patriots had a solid game against them yesterday, probably his best game of the year. Then the Vikings, we saw what Noah Fant did to them yesterday, and then the Rams, who can be exploited by the opposing tight end. I like Jacob Hollister. Now, I don't think he's going to give you that high reception and yard ceiling that Ryan Griffin gives you. Jacob Hollister is more of that touchdown-dependent option. But it seems like he's picking up where Will Dissly left off, being that red zone target for Russell Wilson. Jacob Hollister is another guy you want to keep an eye on, if not absolutely positively pick up. When Russell Wilson's your quarterback, it's a Seattle team. Their defense isn't what it used to be. They need to score points. He is a Russell Wilson target in the red zone. You absolutely need to roster Jacob Hollister. And let's wrap up at the quarterback position. And I just talked about Sam Darnold. Darnold in the past 2 games, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. He is looking like that first-round pedigree that the Jets drafted him to be. 2 straight wins, and he has the Raiders. It's going to be a tough game. I do believe the Raiders will win, but I think they will give up some production to Sam Darnold. Then Cincinnati, and then Miami. Outstanding matchups for Sam Darnold. So if you're in a 2-quarterback league, Superflex, Sam Darnold should already be rostered. But if you're in a 12 to 16 team league and your standard season longs and you're dealing with quarterback injuries or bye weeks, Sam Darnold probably should be started in each of the next 3 matchups. There's not a bad one in the next couple of games. And that's really it. Jeff Driscoll, Sure, he had a big game against my Cowboys. I don't know if they were ready for his scrambling ability because Driscoll coming out of his draft, I'm not sure the year he was drafted, but he was one of the fastest quarterbacks. He was elusive, and it showed against the Cowboys. He gets Washington, Chicago, and Minnesota. Maybe you play him against Washington, but I believe Driscoll will get shut down by the Chicago and Minnesota defenses. So if you need a 1-week rental, Jeff Driscoll is probably the guy if you can't get Darnold. That'll do it for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I was really fired up for it. I'm fired up for the rest of the NFL season. This is my favorite time of the year. This is my favorite thing to do is come on air and talk football with all of you. Tomorrow, Mike Hoff will be back with me. We will react to all of the games on a Week 11 slate. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to react to. Mitchell Trubisky, Lemon Law. I was probably wrong on Kyle Allen, even though Cam Newton might not be the guy for the future of the Carolina Panthers. I don't think it's going to be Kyle Allen either. We'll talk about that. Jameis Winston, 17 turnovers in past 5 games. We're going to talk about that too. And we're going to talk about my Dallas Cowboys. It's Patriots week. Absolutely can't wait to nauseate Michael Hoff tomorrow. My name is Anthony Cervino. Follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. Follow the show at the FF Faceoff. If you're an Apple Podcast user, please subscribe. Leave us a 5-star rating and a 5-star review telling everyone why you love the show and why we are the very best at what we do here at the FF Faceoff, because the more subscriptions, ratings, or reviews that we get, the more people we can reach to help dominate their fantasy football leagues. Until tomorrow, good luck tonight if you're a Chargers or a Chiefs fan. Good luck in your fantasy matchups if you have any players going or if you're playing against anybody that can determine the outcome. Until then, enjoy your Monday night. See you tomorrow.
And now, a thought from Geico Motorcycle.
It took 15 minutes to take a spirit animal quiz online.
Please be the cheetah. Please be the cheetah.
And learn your animal isn't the cheetah, but the far less appealing blobfish.
Oh, come on.
To add insult to injury, you could have used those 15 blobfish minutes to switch your motorcycle insurance to Geico.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on motorcycle insurance. And now, a thought from Geico Motorcycle.
It took 15 minutes to take a spirit animal quiz online.
Please be the cheetah. Please be the cheetah.
And learn your animal isn't the cheetah, but the far less appealing blobfish.
Oh, come on.
To add insult to injury, you could have used those 15 blobfish minutes to switch your motorcycle insurance to Geico.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on motorcycle insurance.